So I come from humble beginnings. I'm the eldest of 4 children, the only male identified child, and part of a very large extended family. My father was a police officer, and my mother cleaned homes for wealthy people in our community. My parents have always been hardworking and provided for our family in oh so many ways. Now, as an adult trying to move myself through this broken, frustrating world, I have such appreciation and admiration for their struggles. Everything they did to make sure that I had clothing and shoes, food, shelter, and even the tiny pleasures of childhood, like fresh watermelon on a hot summer day. All of those things mean more to me now than they did when I was a child. My parents are good people who, like many of us, try to do the right things in our lives and find that sometimes we succeed and sometimes we fail. My mother worked very hard for all of the extra money that we had in our family, and her job was mentally and physically grueling. The wealthy people of my hometown had very particular ways that they wanted their homes cleaned. My mother would often recount scrubbing floors on her hands and knees to get the grout of showers and tiles clean using a toothbrush. And yes, I'm Southern, and for anyone thinking that that's just Southern exaggeration like we like to do, I will point out to my mother's 2 knee replacement surgeries as proof. One particularly wealthy woman in our town always treated my mother with kindness and was so easy to work with, even though she too had her own special ways. One year, as a kind of bonus, my mother was invited to take me and my 3 sisters to the very fancy country club in our hometown. This was quite an exciting time for me and my sisters, as we were told that there would be an open tab for any treats we wanted at the concession stand, and that we were welcome to swim in the pool all day long. It was a beautiful summer's day, and my sisters and I were in the deep end of the pool, near the poolside table where my mother and her boss sat talking. My mother was wearing this amazing turquoise dress with heels. If you can't tell, I'm gay. I remember her leaving the house to drive to the event and thinking, my God, she looks beautiful in that color. I'm not sure if this was the first time that she too had been to the country club or not, but she was definitely overdressed compared to everyone else. The pool was quite busy, had lots of kids splashing around, and at some point, probably during a rousing game of Marco Polo, I heard a commotion behind me, and I turned to see 2 little legs kicking violently from topside of the water. A child had flipped himself upside down in the water, and while he had a life vest on, for some reason, he was having trouble flipping back around. It was at that moment I saw a beam of turquoise fly over my head and splashed into the pool next to the boy. It was my mother in full dress and shoes. She grabbed the child, flipped him up right side up, and swam him to the side of the pool. I have never been more proud of an individual in my whole life. The strength of character that my mother had in that moment to throw all of her caution and to the wind and embrace a fierceness that I think is on par with the goddess Kali was incredible. I became even more enamored with my mother when I overheard the mother of the boy chastise her for the spectacles she caused. At that moment, she said, "He was in a life vest. He would have turned around eventually." I suppose she had forgot the old warning that you can drown in even a teaspoon of water. Now, I was mostly raised around strong women, but this was my first witness to the power of feminine presence and energy. It didn't have anything to do with this situation. I certainly didn't have anything to do with this situation, but simply bearing witness changed me. My heart was softened that day, and my compassion for others was deeply increased. This was the kind of person I wanted to be. I know that when I witness the horrors of this world, like genocides that are ongoing in Congo, Sudan, and Palestine, and the warmongering of places like Haiti and the Ukraine, my heart takes a beating, and my compassion sometimes becomes strained and tired. My mother taught me that at that moment, the opposite can also occur. When we bear witness to the delights of life and embrace compassion and care, we too can be changed. Perhaps those of you who were with us to bear witness against anti-Semitism this past week at Walnut Creek City Council meeting can attest to the power of collective care and compassion. Our religious traditions are peppered with stories of this kind of fierce manifestation of feminine power. We saw one example today from Hinduism during the Time for All Ages, but that's not the only example. In Catholicism and Christianity, the Mother Mary is often revered as the Queen of Heaven, representing a purity and providing guidance to the believers, seen as a teacher of forgiveness and empathy and humility. In Chinese Buddhism, at least according to one legend, Kuan Yin was a beautiful Indian princess who forsook marriage and the good life to live in a convent in order to become a truly enlightened human being, or a bodhisattva. After having achieved enlightenment and the right, therefore, to enter Buddhist heaven or nirvana, legend has it that while at heaven's gates, Kuan Yin heard the despairing cry of someone back on earth. Upon hearing that cry, she returned to the earthly plane and vowed to stay there through many rebirth cycles to help all those who suffer achieve the same level of enlightenment that she had, so that they too could enter nirvana. Kuan Yin's name means the one who hears the cries of the world. Paganism, an umbrella term for spiritual paths that are deeply connected to the cycles of nature, often revere the divine feminine through various goddess figures. The worship of the goddess in nature symbolizes fertility, abundance, and nurturing aspects of creation. These are all manifestations and representations of a divine feminine power across all of our mythical stories, and they showcase a diverse and richness of all of our spiritual beliefs. Each tradition offers up unique insights into what is considered feminine sacredness. While some emphasize what might stereotypically be maternal qualities, others highlight independence or transformative power, like Kali. They range from fierce protectors to gentle nurturers. I think it's so important to note that these attributes of human expression can be explored and are indeed found in all of the genders across the spectrum. The mother's love of a child and deep desire to protect can be seen in all of us who choose to parent or care for a child. I was reminded today by my colleague Travis that in many of our religious stories, the personas of compassion and love are often portrayed as feminine characters. It's in those stories, those that embrace this fierce femininity, where we lift up the fact that those characters are not willing to take their own individual perfection instead of recognizing their interconnectedness and embracing of a liberation that is more collective. So they are often seen as valuing the group beyond the individual self. My mother's story emerges for me as a radiant thread in my life's tapestry. I witnessed her embody all of those divine feminine qualities with grace and strength. And like a modern-day depiction of goddesses like Kali or Kuan Yin, I saw her wield a maternal instinct that transcended societal boundaries. She taught me community care in that moment. And as I wrote about this, I realized that the divine feminine sacredness isn't reserved solely for one gender or another, but it's actually available to all of us. Just as the myriad of faith traditions lie all of the different ways in which we can express divine feminine energy, I've come to understand that care, protection, and empowerment really doesn't know a gender role, but is woven into our humanity with universal beauty. So on this day, I want to wish anyone and everyone who taps into their divine femininity, whether childless or childful, male, female, or any of the betweens, those who have birthed, those who have lost births, and those who don't want to birth, a very happy Mother's Day.